A grim start in year 2 as viewership craters. Damn. Unrivaled, the nascent 3-on-3 women's basketball league is off to a shaky start in its second year. The league, which has a slated goal of providing elite women's basketball players an alternative to...
The atmosphere was supposed to be one of triumph, of validation. Year 2. This was the moment the experiment was meant to solidify, to prove its thesis to a skeptical sports landscape. Instead, the numbers that flashed across the screens of Warner Brothers Discovery executives were not just disappointing. They were a 5-alarm fire, a 75% viewer hemorrhage in some time slots, an opening night audience of 175,000 on TNT, a figure that would be considered modest for a mid-major college game, had crumbled to a mere 71,000 by the second weekend. For a league branded Unrivaled, a name that now rings with unintended irony, this wasn't a shaky start. It was a gravitational collapse. The premise was noble, even revolutionary. Provide the world's elite women's basketball players a premium, stateside off-season alternative to the grueling overseas grind. Backed by the might of TNT's sports broadcasting legacy and starring faces like Breanna Stewart and Napheesa Collier, Unrivaled positioned itself not as a competitor to the WNBA, but as a complementary force, a solution to a perennial problem. Yet,
According to a report by Front Office Sports on Wednesday, Unrivaled's opening slate of games on January 5th averaged just 175,000 viewers across TNT and TruTV. 2 additional games on opening day that only aired on TruTV averaged 32,000 viewers. From there, the numbers have...
Unblinking logic of television ratings has delivered a verdict that threatens to unravel the entire venture. The conversation is no longer about growth, potential, or building a brand. It is about survival, about escape clauses, and about a stark revelation. The market for a fragmented, off-season women's basketball product may be a phantom. But to view Unrivaled's plummeting ratings as an isolated failure is to miss the forest for a single withering tree. This isn't merely the story of one league's struggle. It is the opening act of a profound and chaotic power struggle, a 3-way collision between competing visions for the future of women's professional basketball. In one corner, Unrivaled clings to its stateside off-season model, now on life support. In another, a shadowy entity known only as Project B makes grandiose yet suspiciously vague promises of global tournaments and life-changing paydays. And in the third, looming over both, the WNBA itself is flexing its institutional muscle, proposing the most aggressive expansion in its history, aiming to finally become the undisputed year.
Let's go to the part we all want to know. Quote, "We're building Unrivaled for the long game, and we're confident in our outlook, keeping in mind the same core principles and goals we set forth when establishing the league," Unrivaled CEO Alex Bezel told Front Office Sports. "We're proud of the product we're putting on the court each week and are going to continue growing our audience while showcasing the best women's basketball players in the world."
Round home for the best players in the world. The crumbling of Unrivaled's viewership is the catalyst that has forced this simmering conflict to a boil, exposing fundamental questions about economics, athlete welfare, and the very structure of the sport. This is a story about leverage and how it is evaporating for players in real time. It is a story about ownership, waiting patiently in the wings, sensing an opportunity to consolidate power. And it is a story about a player association caught in a trap of its own making, demanding NBA-level compensation while simultaneously trying to preserve a right to a fragmented calendar that may be physically and financially unsustainable. The data, as reported by Front Office Sports, is a clinical dissection of a promise unmet. The January 5th opening slate, averaging 175,000 viewers across TNT and TruTV, was a faint pulse. The 2 games exiled solely to TruTV managed a catastrophic 32,000. The trajectory since has been flat or down. The league's CEO, Alex Bezel, responded to these figures with the poised, optimistic language of a startup founder. "We're building Unrivaled for the long game. We're proud of the product we're putting on the court."
Dare I say, The Breeze and the Mist, when it combined 1 for 26 from the 3-point line. I'm looking on Twitter and I'm seeing bloopers of these. They're still falling all over each other. We're still doing the mic and I don't know what's going on.
This is the necessary PR stance. The reality playing out on social media and on the court tells a different, more visceral story. The digital water cooler is not a buzz with highlights of dazzling, unprecedented play. Instead, it is flooded with blooper reels, clips of the teams dubbed the Mist and the Breeze, combining to shoot a surreal one for 2-6 from 3-point range. Videos of players, legs seemingly made of lead, stumbling over each other in a display of profound fatigue, not intense competition. There are awkward, mid-game technical glitches with microphones, undermining the polished 4TV product. This is year 2, and the aesthetic is less elite professional league and more high-level scrimmage after a cross-country flight. The contrast with other emerging sports properties is particularly damning. Take TGL, the made-for-TV golf league spearheaded by Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy. It features golfers hitting shots into a simulator screen, and yet this conceptual experiment is pulling 3 to 4 times the audience of Unrivaled. Let that juxtaposition sink.
Paramount will probably get Unrivaled the bleep out of here. I gotta be honest. Paramount would most likely get Unrivaled the bleep out of here. Netflix, on the other hand, they'd probably like a message like Unrivaled to be on their platform. I'm just being honest.
The spectacle of golf balls being struck indoors is quadrupling the viewership of Breanna Stewart and Napheesa Collier playing basketball. This isn't a commentary on the athlete's greatness, which is indisputable. It is a devastating indictment of the league's packaging, timing, and perhaps its very reason for being. The audience is voting with their remotes, and the verdict is clear. An off-season, 3-on-3 league featuring fatigued stars is not a compelling product. The business realities are now turning brutal. Unrivaled 6-year media rights deal with TNT contains a critical poison pill, an opt-out clause after 3 years if the league fails to gain traction. We are in year 2, and the league is not merely stuck in the mud, it is actively sliding backwards down the hill. The timing of this collapse could not be more perilous. Warner Brothers, Discovery, TNT's parent company, is a ship in stormy seas, caught in a...
Something tells me that Project B is not going to be getting the top players. Just, if there is a Project B, just something tells me the top... I don't know. It just reeks of scam to me. It reeks of, let me just wash some money off real quick. Just reeks of, let me just launder a couple, it just reeks to me. If it comes out and it's a real thing, I'll believe it. But as of right now, I'm taking everything Project B comes out with a grain of salt. Everything Project B announces, I'm taking with a grain of salt. So is it going to conflict with proposed start date? Yeah, I guess. Is there really going to be a Project B?
A messy sale process with suitors like Netflix and Paramount Global circling. This impending ownership change is the sword of Damocles hanging over Unrivaled. New owners perform a ruthless triage. They examine every asset on the balance sheet and ask one simple binary question. Is this making money or losing money? For a league pulling 70,000 viewers, the answer is unequivocal. The calculus of the potential buyers is fascinating. Netflix, with its voracious appetite for prestige, conversation-driving content that fits a progressive, brand-friendly profile, might see value in Unrivaled as a strategic sports-adjacent acquisition. It could be tucked behind the paywall, promoted as part of a broader lifestyle and sports expansion, where raw viewership is less critical than cultural buzz. Paramount Global, however, presents a starkly different prospect. The company is in severe cost-cutting mode, shedding assets and pruning expenses. To Paramount's executives, Unrivaled would look less like prestige content and more like a vanity project, a money-losing operation with negligible audience reach. If Paramount wins the bidding war, the fate of Unrivaled seems sealed. That opt-out clause would almost certainly be triggered, consigning the league to the annals of well-intentioned but failed sports experiments. The grim reality...
Tokyo tournament stop, will start March 26th and end April 4th. The 5-on-5 league is planning a global series of tournaments in Europe, Asia, and the Americas. It's likely that the Tokyo stop will be one of the league's last before players return to the WNBA. Let me say this actually as a side note. Let's say there is a Project B. Nothing would make me happier than the WNBA owner saying, "Oh yeah, you're in Project B. You can't come over here late. You can play in Project B, but you're going to be here for the..."
Is that the league's survival may hinge less on its on-court product and more on the winner of a corporate takeover battle wholly unrelated to basketball. As Unrivaled stumbles in the public spotlight, a more enigmatic player has emerged from the shadows: Project B. If Unrivaled's problem is too much of the wrong kind of attention, Project B's is a profound and suspicious absence of concrete detail. Announced with fanfare in December as a globe-trotting, big-money tournament series for elite women, it then fell into a weeks-long silence that felt less like strategic planning and more like radio silence from a distant star. Then, abruptly and with minimal fanfare, it announced dates for a Tokyo tournament, March 26th through April 4th. Notice what is missing from this announcement. There is no named venue, no broadcast partner, no ticket sale information, no clarity on which players, beyond the few initially named, will actually participate. Just dates floating in the digital ether. In the meticulously planned world of professional sports, this is aberrant behavior. It doesn't follow the standard playbook of building hype, securing infrastructure, and then announcing to the world. The whole operation, from the cryptic name to the vaporware announcements, reeks. As commentators have bluntly stated, it reeks of a venture built on promises rather than foundations. The most sinister interpretation, one whispered in basketball circles, is that it resembles a money laundering operation disguised as a sports league, a way to move capital under the glamorous cover of elite athletics. A more charitable view is that it is simply a hopelessly under-organized and underfunded project from promoters in over their heads. But legitimacy is not assumed. It must be proven, and Project B has provided no proof. Even if we grant Project B the benefit of the doubt and assume it is a legitimate, if bumbling, endeavor, it immediately creates a massive logistical conflict. Those Tokyo dates, March 26 to April 4, land directly in the crosshairs of the WNBA's most aggressive proposed schedule expansion in league history. According to sources familiar with the ongoing collective bargaining agreement, CBA, negotiations, the WNBA is pushing to start training camp as early as mid-March and expand the regular season from 44 games to between 50 and 54. This expansion is a tectonic shift. Under the current CBA, last season's training camp started on April 27th, providing a long buffer for players to conclude overseas commitments. A mid-March start annihilates that buffer. A player committed to a Project B tournament ending April 4th would miss at least 2, if not 3, critical weeks of WNBA training camp and potentially early season games. This forces an impossible choice: the promised, yet unproven, payday of Project B, or your contractual, foundational commitment to your WNBA team. This impending conflict is where the WNBA's institutional power is poised to assert itself. The league and its owners have, for years, operated with a degree of deference to players' overseas earning power, accepting late arrivals as a cost of doing business. But that dynamic changes if the league is offering significantly higher salaries and demanding a longer, more rigorous season. The message will become explicit. If you choose to play in Project B, that is your prerogative. But you will not receive special dispensation. You will join your team under the existing grace period rules for international players, missing games, forfeiting practice time, and potentially jeopardizing your standing. The leverage tilts away from the star player and toward the franchise that signs your primary, and now more substantial, paycheck. This brings us to the heart of the stalemate: the CBA negotiations between the WNBA and its Players Association, WNBPA. The players submitted a bold proposal before Christmas, a document that lays bare their aspirations and, some would argue, their disconnect from current economic realities. The asks are staggering. A jump to a $10.5 million team salary cap and a share of roughly 30% of league gross revenue. These are not incremental requests. They are demands for a wholesale re-architecting of the league's financial model, aiming to bring it closer to the NBA's revenue-sharing paradigm. The WNBA's response to this proposal has been deafening in its silence. Weeks have passed into the new year with no formal counter. This silence is not administrative delay. It is a strategic tool. It is the sound of ownership looking at the proposal, looking at Unrivaled's cratering ratings, looking at Project B's phantom promises, and calculating that time is on their side. The silence says, this proposal is not a starting point for negotiation. It is a fantasy document that doesn't merit a formal reply. Bring us something grounded in the reality of our revenue, and then we will talk. The owner's leverage is growing by the day, fed by the failures of the alternatives. The players' argument has long rested on a foundational pillar of negotiation: BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Their BATNA was the ability to walk away and earn significant money elsewhere in Europe, in Asia, and now, theoretically, in Unrivaled or Project B. But what happens when your BATNA collapses? Unrivaled is demonstrating that its economic model may be non-viable, threatening its very existence. Project B is shrouded in such skepticism that it cannot be relied upon as a legitimate alternative. Overseas leagues, while still financially attractive for many, are often grueling, present injury risks, and keep players away from home for extended periods. Furthermore, the WNBA's proposed earlier start date directly attacks the viability of the full European season. As these alternatives wither, the WNBA's monopoly power grows. The league is no longer just one option among several. It is increasingly becoming the only option for top-tier, stable, high-profile professional women's basketball in the United States. In the ruthless calculus of labor negotiations, this is a devastating erosion of player leverage. The WNBA's expansion proposal, more games, higher salaries, and elongated calendar, is a masterstroke disguised as a concession. It is a power move. By offering more money, though likely far less than the player's initial ask, the league makes it financially irrational for a star to risk injury and fatigue for a side hustle league. By extending the season into March and November, it physically blocks the calendar space needed for those leagues to operate. The WNBA is effectively offering to buy out the players' offseason. The subliminal message is, stop the grinding global commute. Stop playing for 6 different teams in a year. Sign here. Make a very strong living focused solely on our product, and help us build something sustainable. This is also, crucially, a proposal framed around player welfare. The product on Unrivaled's court, the sloppy play, the poor shooting, the visible exhaustion is a powerful advertisement for the dangers of year-round play without rest. The WNBA can position itself as the responsible entity, offering the financial security that allows for proper off-season recovery, training, and injury rehabilitation. It's a compelling narrative. We will pay you enough so that you don't have to destroy your body chasing checks on 3 different continents. All these threads: Unrivaled's collapse, Project B's specter, the WNBA's expansion push, and the frozen CBA negotiations are now woven into a single, taut cable, and it is stretched to its breaking point. The immediate future hinges on 2 imminent dominoes. First, the WNBA's next media rights deal. The current agreement with ESPN, ABC, and CBS is expiring. The league is in active negotiations for a new package that will define its financial ceiling for the next decade. The owner's silence at the bargaining table is almost certainly a waiting game for this number. If the new deal represents a massive leap, say, into the $200 million annual range, then the revenue exists to make a meaningful move toward the player's demands. The conversation transforms. If the deal is disappointing, a modest bump from the current to $60 million annually, then the player's proposal is dead, and a bitter labor fight becomes inevitable. Second, the ownership resolution at Warner Bros. Discovery. The fate of Unrivaled's broadcasting lifeline rests on whether Netflix or Paramount takes the keys. This corporate decision will effectively decide whether the league gets a stay of execution or has its plug pulled. The most probable scenario is a convergence of these events that consolidates power entirely within the WNBA. A respectable, if not earth-shattering, media rights deal allows the league to table a serious CBA offer with real salary increases, though not $10.5 million caps, and a 50-plus game season starting in early May. Unrivaled, abandoned by its broadcaster or limping along with no audience, fades after year 3. Project B either fails to launch or hosts a poorly attended tournament that proves its lack of operational competence. The WNBA would thus emerge as the undisputed, unchallenged center of the women's basketball universe. This is the endgame the league has sought for years. But with that victory comes a profound responsibility and a moment of moral truth. If the WNBA successfully eliminates the competition, corners the market on elite talent, and still fails to provide fair market value compensation and investment in player marketing, travel, and amenities, then the charade is over. It would prove that the problem was never competition from alternative leagues, but a fundamental undervaluation of the athletes by the ownership class itself. This leaves the players at a historic crossroads, a fork in the road with no option to walk down both paths. The choice is becoming stark. Path A, the consolidated professional. Accept a longer, more demanding WNBA season with significantly higher pay, even if not the full 30% share, healthcare, and benefits. In exchange, you forego the major overseas seasons and the uncertain side leagues. Your career is your WNBA career. You trade the nomadic, high-risk, high-reward globetrotting for stability, focus, and the chance to build a stronger, more popular domestic league. Path B, the independent contractor. Fight for a shorter NBA season with more modest salary gains, preserving the calendar and financial flexibility to pursue the highest bidder globally, wherever that may be. This path embraces the mercenary model, prioritizing maximum annual earnings over league building and stability, accepting the physical toll and instability that comes with it. The calendar is immutable. The human body's need for recovery is non-negotiable. The economic realities of niche sports leagues are harsh. Something has to give. The crumbling viewership for Unrivaled isn't just a ratings failure. It is the first major domino to fall in a chain reaction that will reshape an entire sport. The players' leverage is precarious. The owners are sensing their moment, and the next few months will determine whether women's basketball continues its fractured, global scramble or finally coalesces into a unified, powerful, and properly valued major league sport. The second year of Unrivaled may be remembered not for its games, but for its collapse, the event that finally forced the inevitable and painful reckoning.